Alright, lads, so our next set of Lumen Breaker quest is releasing in a few days' time, in this case, April 1st. For this month's quest, they want us to bring a melee technique hollow killer, a ranged heart human killer, and also a heart Quincy killer. If you can have a character that matches most of the requirements, likely you are going to go relatively far. Especially this time around, because the best team, the team they kind of want you to bring this time, is the new Mila Rose in slot 1, Byakuya in slot 2, and then Ichigo in slot number 3. Now, with slot 2 and 3 being dedicated to these two 1000G Bloodroot characters, for those that are wondering, this does mean they are going to return within the first 2 weeks of April. The Byakuya, Renji, and also Ruki ban has already been data mined. That should be starting in a few days, and no, we do not know the filler pool as of yet, so that banner should be first up, and then probably a week after, we will get the return of Senjumaru, Ichigo, and also Askin. So in regards to this upcoming end of month banner, obviously, it's a cool banner, but it's not the most exciting one in terms of character choices and what they maybe do offer. So if you aren't really interested in summoning on that banner, but you are massive fans of Byakuya, Renji, Rukia, Ichigo, Senjumaru, Askin, then you might want to save some orbs for those banners because they are coming back. And in the case for Fullbring Ichigo, Senjumaru, and Askin, this is the first time they are returning. So pretty exciting reruns coming our way, and if you do happen to pull them, you can take them into Limit Breaker, because any team that uses Ichigo in particular just gets significantly better, as he does offer an extra Soul Bomb with the recharge in between stages. Now, one thing I do actually find pretty funny in regards to the character rules, we very rarely ever see something like this, where the melee damage this time around is 2.5 times. Now, there's two main reasons why they've gone ahead and done this. One, because Sun doesn't have the craziest damage output. She only gets Frenzy +3 in Guild Quest content. But I think, in a way, it's also for Caleb to try and, persuade you to summon for this character instead of just using Gremmy. Because as we know, Gremmy is a very powerful character. And this time around, in regards to the rules, he does get the technique damage bonus, and he also does get the killer effect. He is missing out on the melee damage, but it is Gremmy, and he would definitely be a great substitute, and probably spare you the need of even summoning to try and get into like 25. Especially if you are someone that maybe has this character duped out at max transcendence. So having a closer look at the rules, if we sort by a technique melee hollow killer, what exactly are we working with? And one of the reasons why Mila Rose is going to stand out, at least when it comes to Limit Breaker, is that the other available technique hollow killers really aren't that good. As you can see here, our last melee technique hollow killer was Safui Retsu Unohana. Really cool character, and was one of the best characters in the game at the time of her release. But with the way Limit Breaker does work now, I don't think she's going to be too great. I'm kind of curious to test her out, and I'll see how she does perform, but the big problem with this unit is that she doesn't have a spiritual pressure boost. So her damage output, sure, is going to be consistent for the most part, but she isn't going to have the highest of highs that we're going to see with, newer and more relevant characters. So it's kind of due to that reason I wouldn't really recommend using any immediate technique hollow killer, other than, of course, the new Sun. Like I've already mentioned, your next best thing to do is maybe look at technique mini characters. In this case, the problem with these characters here is that none of them are going to have an increased status and chance. But as always, you've got to work with what you have. And if your best character that you can use it is going to be someone like Driscoll or Little Toll, maybe even Swimsuit Bambietta, well, they are going to be decent substitutes, but nothing super crazy. Likewise, though, what we can do is just look at ranged hollow killers. And this time around, this is where you're going to see better characters. In the case for Quincy Ichigo, his damage output is going to be pretty decent. Keep in mind, they are missing out on that 2.5 times melee damage bonus, and that's definitely going to hurt when compared to someone like Sun, but they're still getting the technique damage bonus, they're still getting the killer effect bonus, and they are also technique characters that have an increased status and chance to inflict weakening. That'll be really good. He will also give himself recharge in between stages if you aren't using Fullbring Ichigo in slot 3. The idea with this character is that he should be pretty fast, leading up to the poised enemy stage, where he definitely will suffer a tad bit, because this character's damage output isn't super high. But maybe it balances out, because on the easier stages where you can potentially one-shot, you're going to be having all your strong attacks ready, and you can just spam them going into the next stage. Like I've already stated though, Gremmy is definitely going to be everyone's go-to. And in some cases, again, if you have this character max transcended, not everyone does, but in the potential chance you do, he might actually be better instead of a 1 out of 5 Sun. Like we all already know, when it comes to Gremmy, he has a super high damage output with Frenzy +3, basically a 100% strong attack damage increase with more damage to enemies that are inflicted with a status element. He has an increased status element chance, he has very good strong attacks with a tracking vortex. Since he does have his increased status and chance too, he's going to be constantly proccing that paralysis and also drain. And depending on the stage that you are on, you can then use your EX attack that will lower the enemy's defense and then boost your entire team stats by around 40%. That means going into slot 2 or 3, When it comes to their more difficult stages where the poison enemies are, they're going to have that stat increase for around 15 seconds. So hopefully you do have access to Gremmy. That will basically remove the need of summoning for this new character, Sun, with the idea of getting a somewhat high clearance score. However, if you are pulling anyway, you're probably still better off using Sun, but I'd be very curious myself to see what would be better, a duped out Gremmy or a 1 out of 5 Sun who has all the damage multipliers. So yeah, slot 1, while it is true we don't have access to many nearly hollow killers in the technique attribute, at least we have access to 2 good ranged ones, and both of them are premium and have been out for quite a while, more so Quincy Ichigo. When it comes to slot number 2, we want to bring a heart character that has human killer, and it is a ranged character type. In this case, options are very slim. Byakuya is the only character here that does meet all 3 requirements, because the other alternatives, that being Aaroniero or Kiryu, really aren't the greatest. You would think a character like Kiryu would be decent, given that she's not too old. You know, she only came out at the end of 2023. However, with a bad strong attack 1, with an SA2 that is a melee attack, so it isn't getting that, you know, extra damage multiplier for being a ranged character, and the fact that she does lack an increased statism and chance, you're basically just doing no damage. The only attack that is going to do some good damage is that strong attack 3. The SA1 is going to be inconsistent, and the SA2 isn't getting that big damage multiplier. So the difference between Byakuya or any other character is going to be very much night and day, especially with the fact that Byakuya has Frenzy +2, more damage to status afflicted enemies, which he does give to his 3rd slot character if you are using Ichigo, letting him do more damage. He has an increased statism and chance, 80% spiritual pressure boost, and then basically more damage at full stamina. And with that full stamina damage, with the increased strong attack damage skill that he does have, he basically has 100% strong attack damage increase. On top of the fact that he does have weakening and paralysis, the human enemies are definitely going to be annoying to go against. So him constantly inflicting paralysis is going to solve the need of dealing with those human enemies, and also make sure you do 50% more damage, with an EX skill that can provide barriers for your entire team in case you are worried about taking any damage. If we have a look at some alternatives, so in this case a heart human killer that is melee based, do we have any good character? No, we do not. Alternatively, if we have a look at the heart range characters, does it get any better? Not so much. I think slot 2 is definitely going to be a tad bit restrictive. If anything, maybe you can bring this particular Toshiro. Not going to be the greatest, let's be honest, but he is a ranged character. He is a heart character. So he's getting the 4 times damage output. And without Byakuya, that's basically your next best option, because your other alternatives here are just very lacking. Ha has some good characters here, but not when it comes to ranged characters. It's basically just Toshiro, Byakuya, and maybe to a certain extent, this particular Ruruka, the Valentine's version. When it comes to slot 3, we want to bring a Quincy killer. If they are a heart character, that's even better because they will have attribute advantage. So like I said, this character right here is going to be very good. And if you do have this character in slot 3, you can probably get away to a certain extent of having a not so ideal character in slot 1 and 2, because this character will give you access to an extra soul bomb and also recharge in between stages. So that's going to be really good for saving time on those easier stages and make the more difficult stages, like when against the poison enemies, a lot easier because you can now use 2 soul bombs instead of 1. And obviously in the case for this character too, I mean, he's just going to do ridiculous damage against his enemies, especially because slot 3 is more often than not the easiest stage. The enemies themselves have less HP, so Ichigo in slot 3 is absolutely going to dominate this even at 1 out of 5. And the reason simply is because similar to Gremmy, we have a very powerful character with a damage output that is almost unmatched compared to any other character in the game. Frenzy +3, a high berserker value, he has an 80% spiritual pressure boost, he gets more damage the more kills he gets, and then he also does have a superior strong attack 2, which does 20% more damage compared to a normal strong attack, and his EX skill does increase his spiritual pressure boost by 100%, ensuring that when you go against a poison enemy with the weakening effect too, especially with Byakuya in slot 2, you're then getting 30% more damage. You're just going to do a ridiculous amount of damage with this character. Again, super crazy in slot number 3. If you don't have this Ichigo, what is your next best option? In this case, I would probably say Ishin. Now, Ishin is going to be available in the upcoming end of month banner, and the reason why you would want to use Ishin, then again, not really the most ideal, because his increased statism enchant is only against heart enemies, but he does have Quincy Killer. He does have Quincy Killer, so he will be getting that extra bit of damage, but I think the idea with Ishin is just to cheese your way through it with the burn and last rate. He's one of the few characters in the game that have 2 damage over time status augments. So this means if you do inflict a status augment, especially on the latest stages past stage 20, each tick of that burn and last rate will be doing millions of damage. It's not going to be as reliable since you again do not have the increased status augment chance. However, with the Vortex, it should hopefully go quite well. In regards to any other character, not really too sure how they would perform. Like always though, you could just go with a heart character, but they aren't going to get that Quincy damage bonus. Maybe to a certain extent, you could get away using this character here. Now, he doesn't have Quincy Killer, so he isn't getting that damage multiplier, but he does have an increased Starsman chance against Quincy's. And in that case, he then does do 150% more damage. And if you do have Byakuya in slot 2, that will let him do 30% more damage since he is a Soripa. And maybe you can work with that, especially as he is a heart character. So slot 3 basically seems to be the Ichigo slot, either Fullbring Ichigo or Tree Shikai Ichigo. Now, as of right now, I'm not really too sure how difficult this Limit Breaker quest will actually be. Fortunately, the best in slot for each character, slot 1, 2, and 3, we do have access to some of the best characters in the game. So if you do have them, you're going to definitely benefit from that. We used a similar team in the past, and it works very well together. I believe this was actually back in January, funny enough, so not too long ago. But yeah, slot 1 should be relatively easy, even if you don't pull the new Sun, assuming you have access to Gremmy. Slot 2 and 3 definitely could be a bit difficult, since they are quite restricted here. But if you kept up to date with some of the character released at the end of the year, you know, Byakuya's banner and Ichigo's banner were some of the biggest banners of the year, so I would like to hope you do have them. If not, they are returning this month, within the next 2 weeks, and that gives you another chance of summoning for them. In the comments below, let me know what team you guys are using, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care, and peace.